Welcome to Shmirchik Veterans Corner. Today, yikes, starting off with a disaster. Today is coinciding Christmas, which we call Christmas, falls out on the first day of Hanukkah, right? Not exactly, because now it's the eve of Hanukkah, so it's not really falling out on the same exact day, but similar, right? So, like, almost on the same day, right? So, for those people who don't hate Jews, for those Christians who don't hate Jews, I wish you a very Merry Christmas. Christmas, I wish you very Merry Christmas. And for those of the Jewish people who are celebrating Hanukkah, well, Happy Hanukkah and Happy Holiday for the entire world, right? So, Today, what we're going to do is, because it's the first night of Hanukkah, and we do lots of celebrations, usually people who, most people usually make plans to hang out with friends, and which I failed to do this time. Enough time to hang out with people and celebrate. So, there's a few traditions that Jews follow. So I'm cleaning this. There's a few traditions that Jewish people follow, right? And one of them is lighting the candles, playing with the dreidels, and right. I saw one of my earlier videos that I did today was it was about some migrants who were literally attacking Jewish girls and accusing them of gambling. Well, the only gambling that we do is on Hanukkah when we play with the dreidel. And first of all, everybody receives gifts and Hanukkah geld, which is like money, on every night. They don't have to, but yeah, that's part of the tradition. And they play this game with the dreidel. And it's like a gambling game, right? So it's Nun, Gimel, Hey, Pay, right? So in Israel, they put the letter Pei, which stands for Paul, which means here, right? The great miracle happened here in Israel. If you lived in Israel, it says a great miracle happened here. If you live outside of Israel, then you say a great miracle happened there, right? So I'm used to singing the song Nun Gimel Hey Shin, which is a great miracle happened in Israel, right? But now that I live in Israel, the dreidels are made out with this Pei. And I'll explain the game as we go on to celebrate this holiday, right? So I have my menorah, and I have my prayer book, and so, right? Let's do this the right way, okay? So this is in here. Let's make it a little bit more sturdy. We light the candle from left to right, so, and we say a blessing over it and everything. So I'm wondering, should I speak about what happened on Hanukkah? Should we talk about what happened on Hanukkah, or should I talk about what happened on Hanukkah first? Or should I just light the candle first? Maybe we should learn about it a little bit. Yeah? Should we do a brief preview of what happened on Hanukkah? Story of Hanukkah in short, and then we'll light the candle. Story of Hanukkah in short. Okay, so let's see which one is shorter. Right? History of Hanukkah. Right? Let's find a shorter one. I think this one will be shorter. Yeah. So, the story of Hanukkah is the story of Hanukkah in brief. During the time of the Second Temple, right, there were two holy temples in Israel, right, going back like 3,000 years ago, something like that, right? The Holy Land, Israel, was ruled by cruel Greeks. They robbed the Jews of their property and set up idols in the Holy Temple, in the Beit HaMikdash, right? And as we all know, we're not allowed to worship any image whatsoever that is considered idolatry, right? So they tried to set up all different kinds of deities in the Holy Temple, and no one could stand up against these monsters, the Greek oppressors. They were occupying Israel, right? Till Matisyahu and his sons rose up and drove them from the land, and they were called the Maccabees. And it stands for, Maccabee stands for Milchamecha be'elam Hashem, whoever is for God stand with me. And that's why they were called the Maccabees. And they were like zealots who were very, very zealous for the cause, right? And because of them, we celebrate Hanukkah, right? So Matisyahu and his sons rose up and drove the Greeks from the land. The Hanukkah lights remind us of the great miracle that a small band of Jews defeated the mighty Greek armies. Just like today, a small band of Jews in Israel are defeating our enemies. Billions of Islamists from all around the world who are trying to kill us and oppress us, right? And so we are fighting back and we are winning. And it's by the grace of God, right? The Greeks were philosophers. They accepted the Torah as a book of wisdom, but not as something holy that connects the Jews to God. In the end, they made Torah learning illegal and outlawed mitzvot, commandments like keeping the Sabbath and blessing the moon, right, on Rosh Chodesh, and circumcision, Brit Milah, and the holiness of Jewish marriage. They would do terrible things. We can get into it later, what they would do to the women, right? So the Maccabees risked their lives to keep Torah alive. That's why they won. The miracle of the light. An even greater miracle than defeating the Greek armies was the miracle of the oil. The Greeks had made all the oil in the Holy Temple and the Bet HaMikdash impure. Miraculously, the Maccabees found one jar that had been overlooked. But it only had enough oil for one day. So great was their love of God that they lit it anyway, right? And so the oil, right? The oil, it had to be pure, right? It had to be made special way, and it had to have the seal of the holy, the high priest on it, and they couldn't find any oil with the seal. All of them had been desecrated and broken, and they found a small jar that was enough to last for one day, which had the seal of the high priest on it, and the jar of oil that was meant to last for one day lasted 8 days until they were able to make more oil, right? So great was their love of God, they believed in God, that they decided to light the menorah in the Holy Temple anyway, right? This is the menorah. I'm not sure if you can see, right? Because this was a thing that the high priest would light the menorah every day in the Holy Temple, right? God made another miracle, and the oil burned for 8 days. Everyone could see that the Shekhinah, God's presence, dwelt with the Jews. With tremendous joy, the Jews cleansed the Beit HaMikdash and began to serve Hashem once again. The Jews cleansed the Holy Temple and began to serve God once again. Nowadays, we have to draw on that joy because the darkness has grown very great. That's why we make Hanukkah parties with dreidels, latkes, and Hanukkah geld, which is money, which everybody gives to each other. Joy has the power to overcome any negative thing and break any evil decree. So there are also very inspiring stories about Jews that were going through hard times, even today, right? Like, for example, put this here. For example, right? For example, today, right, during the Holocaust, right, when the Jews were in the concentration camps, a lot of the Jewish people, they wanted to celebrate Hanukkah, and the only way they can do that, they couldn't do it without getting killed or caught. And there's heroic stories on how they anyways did it in secret, and they celebrated Hanukkah in the concentration camps, right? And so it's a very inspiring holiday that even inspires people in the times of great oppression, right? Every day, and it's important to note that today, while we celebrate Hanukkah, there are 120 hostages still being kept in Gaza by the terrible terrorists, the enemies of the world and of the Jews. They are holding hostage 120 innocent civilians, men, women, and children, who are not able to celebrate this holiday with us. And so we have to keep them in mind and keep them in our prayers that they be released immediately from the evil grasp of our enemies, the terrorist Hamas, right? and the Gazans who are participating in the vile, evil act of kidnap, which is a crime, right? So every day of Hanukkah, we add another candle till all 8 candles of the menorah are ablaze. By adding a candle every night for 8 days, we charge ourselves up with light, so that we will constantly be adding in Torah and in the commandments of the mitzvot, which are compared to light, throughout all the days of the year to come. The light of the Hanukkah candles is holy, like the light of the menorah. In the Beit HaMikdash, we are careful not to use it for any purpose. Our commandment is just to look at the candles and listen to the story that they tell, filling the world with light. The miracle of Hanukkah occurred in a dark time, when there were wicked decrees against the Jews. But the Maccabees had courage and never lost hope. Their Mesiras Nefesh, their self-sacrifice, turned the darkness into light. Today, too, our self-sacrifice for Torah and the commandments will light up the world and bring Mashiach, the Messiah, right? Who will come speedily in our days. So, perhaps later we'll also watch a video on Hanukkah, which is very exciting. And so, without further ado, now we will, light the candles, okay? So, here we go. Let's see if I can do this. First of all, is the sound on? Or I'm talking to myself? And so, without further ado, now okay, perfect. So, let's light the candles. Maybe I can put it somewhere where right where you guys can see it up close, right? I don't have a table or anything. Right? Put it here. I don't know if you guys can see. So we light from right to left. Right? From right to left? I can't even see it. It's like it blends in. Do you know what I'm saying? How can I need to get like a small little table? Maybe I can use so you guys can see it. I'm really supposed to put it by the window, right? But how about we use this? Right? Let's use this. Okay. I know it's garbage, so we'll cover it with this. Just until we finish lighting it, shall we? You see it? Hold on. You don't even see it. No, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. How about? Should have thought about this before. I have a table. No. You know what I'll do? I'll just light it here, standing, and you guys will enjoy it. Right? Okay. Here's the candles, and we're going to say the blessing, and yeah. Here's my prayer book. We light it from right to left. Okay. Let's do this, right? Light the candle, and we're going to say the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam she'asa nisim l'avoseinu vayamim ha'hem b'zman hazeh. Amen. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen. And then I'm going to light the candle. Right? A Hanukkah menorah. Light the candle from left to right. Right? And then what I'm going to do is I have to make sure it stays. So, and we sing a song. Ma'osor Yeshua si lechana el shabeach. Let me get the lyrics. Here we are. Right. Ma'osor Yeshua si lechana el shabeach. Tikon ves tefilati l'sham toda nizabeach le'ez takin matbeach mitzor haminabeach az egmor ashir mizmor Chanukah tamizbeach az egmor ashir mizmor Chanukah tamizbeach. Then I'm going to put it over here. I'm supposed to really look at it for a half hour, so maybe I should put it on the... Maybe I should put it over here, by the sink, so that I can keep my eye on it, and it's by the window also. So there it is, and then we're going to sing Haner Salalu, right? And then I'll explain what the song is. Right, where are we? My siddur. Haner rice, hallelujah. Haner rice, hallelujah. I can hold it. Haner, this is what we sing at home. This is how I grew up singing, right? Haner rice, and I'll tell you what the meaning is, right? Hallelujah, hallelujah. Haner rice, hallelujah. Anu madlikin al hachuais. Bum 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 ba-da-dum. Bum 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 ba-da-dum. Haner rice, hallelujah. Bum 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 ba-da-dum. I can turn off the light. Anu madlikin alachu isi alani suvi ala tiflais she'asi salawaisenu she'asi salawaisenu vayamim ahem bezman hazeh ayamim ahem bezman hazeh bezman hazeh ayidei kayanecha hakdashim 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 ayidei kayanecha hakdashim. Ba-da-dum, 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 ba-da-dum. I can turn this off. You can see the candles better. Ba-da-dum, 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 ba-da-da-da-da-da. Ba-da-dum, 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 ba-da-da-da-da-dum. Ba-da-dum, 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 ba-da-dum. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Chal Shemayne Sinei Chanukah Ner Salalu Kadeshem. Chal Shemayne Sinei Chanukah Ner Salalu Kadeshem. Hem be'eman rishos l'shtamesh bahen ela l'raisa bilvad bilvad. V'chol Shemayim Chanukah Ner Salel L'Kedeshim V'chol Shemayim Chanukah Ner Salel L'Kedeshim Ve'im L'Rishas L'Hishtamish Bahen Ela L'Raisan Bilbad Kedei L'Haydaisu Halal Haydaisu Halal L'Shimcha Haggadah L'Haydaisu Halal L'Haydaisu Halal Majesty. Raspberry. Shimcha Haggadah. Anisecha, Yona Pesecha, Ya Yeshua Secha. Anisecha, Yona Pesecha, Ya Yeshua Secha. Ma'osor Yeshua Si. Echana Elisabeach. Tikol Beis Tefilati. Lisham Toda Nizabeach. Lies Tachimat Beach. Mitzor HaMizbeh Minabeach. Azegmar Veshir Mizmor. Chanukah Tamizbeach. Azegmar Veshir Mizmor. Chanukah Tamizbeach. Okay, we lit the candles for Hanukkah. And it's a woman's mitzvah, by the way. It's a woman's commandment because tell you why, right? Tell you why it's a woman's commandment, right? I want you to see the candles. How are you going to see the menorah if I'm in the way? Well, whatever. We did what we did. We got done what we did, right? Okay. So let me put it where I can see it. Because the commandment is to look at it. To look at the candles for a while. Right? Okay. Okay, so where are we? Okay. So the blessings I said were what it meant, right? It said, bless you, God, right, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with the commandments, command us to kindle Hanukkah light. Blessed are you, King of the universe, who performed miracles for our fathers in those days at this time. Blessed are you, our God, King of the universe, who granted us life, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this occasion. And then there's different music that I sang. I sang Ma'asor Yeshua, right? And the meaning was, O mighty stronghold of my salvation, to praise you is a delight. Restore my house of prayer, and there we will bring a thanksgiving offering. When you will have prepared the slaughter for the blaspheming foe, then I shall complete with a song of hymn, the dedication of the altar. Right? And then we can go on singing the song of Ma'asor Yeshua. It's like we can sing the whole thing. And sing the song, Haner Salalu. Hani was halalu, song meaning, right? Okay, so the song I say, Hane rice, it means, right? What was the meaning? Go back. Let's find the meaning. Right? It means we kindle the lights, these lights, to commemorate the saving acts, miracles, and wonders which you have performed for our forefathers in those days at this time, through your holy priests throughout the 8 days of Hanukkah. These lights are sacred, and we are not permitted to make use of them, but only to look at them, in order to offer thanks and praise to your great name for your miracles, for your wonders, and for your salvation. And so, that's the song I sing. Hallelujah. And then, what I want to show you guys is a little play. Which I found. Okay, so I'm going to go and look it up, see if I can find it. A little play for Hanukkah, right? Let's see if we can play a little skit, right? Okay. Maybe not. Let's do, let's get a little channuka lights. We'll go and we'll watch that video together so you guys can get a feeling of the, so you can get a feeling of what I grew up with, right? It's very beautiful. So, without further ado, give me a minute and we shall rejoice together. Rejoice. And then maybe we'll play, I'll teach you how to play dreidel, right? Okay. Okay. Without further ado, here we go. One second. Without further ado, let's watch this. Display capture. Hold on. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Now you can see what I used to watch, right? Okay. Without further ado, let's watch this video. Story of Hanukkah.
Hanukkah, the festival of lights. It's all about something that happened a long, long time ago. Back then, before it all happened, there wasn't any festival of lights yet, and life went on in Jerusalem more or less the way it always had.
Okay, Miriam.
You could say that the story really started the day the lights first came down to earth. It was far away, at a mountain called Sinai. Years went by, and the strange light made itself right at home in Jerusalem. It seemed that the lights always had something new to tell about doing things for other people, like stopping for a stranger who could use some help. That's the way it was then. The lights were sparkling, speaking everywhere. So they made a special place for the lights, in a golden tree with 7 branches, called the menorah. Then one day, ships came over the sea. Alexander the Great and the armies of Greece set out to unite the whole world. They found the Persians first. Soon, there were no more Persians left to fight. And Alexander remembered Jerusalem had been part of the Persian Empire. Jerusalem.
He was a Persian? Animals know. That's the high priest. I remember learning as a child, right, about the clothing that the high priest in the Holy Temple used to wear. Like, this is part of Jewish studies for the smallest child, right, in Judaism. Every child learns about the Holy Temple. It's part of our tradition, right? Like, this is our connection to the land of Israel, right? Before we were exiled, thrown out, and occupied by others. And only until now we came back home, right, to Israel. And the other Jews need to also come back soon. But I remember the high priest that they're showing in this video, right? He comes out of the Holy Temple, dressed in all those garments, and he's wearing the breastplate, right? And those are the letters. Those are the Hebrew alphabet, right? That the Jews would learn. The Torah, right?
Alexander was fascinated by the lights.
He was good to the Jews.
So there was no battle after all.
So a lot of Jews named their kids after him.
And Alexander and the Greeks came in peace into Jerusalem. The Greeks made themselves right at home in Jerusalem. They showed the people there all kinds of new and beautiful things. Sports, art, music, and a beautiful golden language.
cute. So cute.
The Greeks had brought some beautiful gifts with them to Jerusalem. And the people there were pretty enthusiastic about it all.
Right, so a lot of Jews, they wanted to be just like the Greeks, right? So when the Greeks came and occupied Jerusalem, right? A lot of the Jews back then, they wanted to be just like them because it was cool, it was in. And they had a lot of cool stuff, you know? And then with time, a lot of Jews became known as, I think, Yevanim? Yeah, they became known as renegades. You know, they would go and they started to worship idols and they wanted to be just like them. And they started to take on the Greek names and they rejected the Torah and they, like, intermarried and all that. And there was only a fringe, small set of Jews who stuck to the Torah and to the traditions. And they fought back when the Greeks decided to outlaw Torah study and the commandments of the Torah, right? And that fringe element, they're known as the Maccabees today. Matisyahu and his 5 sons, they gathered a few renegade Jews who were going to stand up to the Greek Empire, and they fought off the mighty Greek Empire, the mighty Greek army. And they, because of them, that small fringe Jews that were the zealots, right? And they were holding steady to the traditions, while most of the Jews, they decided to be like the Greeks. And a lot of the Jews actually joined in with the Greek army against their own people. So it was a miracle that the Maccabees, who were like the religious zealots that stuck to the faith and to the Torah and the traditions and the commandments, they won by a miracle. And they rededicated, they cleansed the Holy Temple, and they kicked the Greeks out, and they rededicated the temple. And this is what the holiday is. And even non-religious Jews, they still celebrate it, not really understanding the significance of who the real people were that fought off the Greeks, right? So, continuing on, right?
Some people even tried to do things just like the Greeks. Well, they tried. In the meantime, while everyone else was learning about the new Greek things, Alexander the Great was trying to figure out the lights.
Fascinating.
Time passed, Alexander the Great was gone, and the new Greeks who ruled over Jerusalem didn't care for the lights very much. And some people couldn't help thinking that things would be better if only they would try to become just like the Greeks.
You would doing pretty well with that discus out there today.
Really think so?
You got a lot of natural talent.
Did you ever think
Okay,
about
so-
competing in the game?
So this is
Of course
Greeks trying to convince Jews to be just like them, right? So here, like, some Jews will go and try to be like the Greeks.
You're gonna have to look more like
But the problem is that their Jewishness was like a sore thumb to a lot of the Greeks. Even though a lot of the Jews tried to act just like the Greeks sometimes couldn't stand them because they can see the Jew in them, right? Like, they can recognize the Jew and the light, right? Which will keep popping up as we watch on, right?
discus throw.
Well, well. Here we are now.
Clothes make the man.
It's good.
Perfect fit.
Very nice.
Terrific.
You know, I was...
So the lights keep the Torah. The light of the Jew keeps popping up. It's very beautiful. This was made by, like, Hollywood producers.
You know, there's a big party.
That's why
Very
it's so well
important.
done.
Come along. We're on our way there right now. It'll be quite an opportunity for
Love to have you.
really outstanding people.
So unusual to have such a time here.
You know, the last time I was back in Greece, I was chariot.
Oh, and did you see what he was wearing?
4 horsepower.
It was better than what she was wearing.
Takes the turns around the hills absolutely fabulous.
You know, you may not have given it much thought, but there are a lot of career opportunities open to someone like you. Really?
The Empire can always use bright, energetic men like yourself in all kinds of conversations.
It's his Jewish soul. His Jewish soul is bothering him, you know? Like, he knows that he's not supposed to be just like the Greeks. He's a Jew. He's supposed to be studying Torah and doing the commandments, but, you know, he just can't get rid of his Jewish soul.
Get out of here. Now, a lot of people just don't realize how important orchestrating public opinion is in this empire. But a guy like you,
With your talent, your ability to get along with people of different backgrounds.
Okay. So then, this guy, he's Jewish, right? They're going to try to use him against his own people, right? They're going to make him go into Jewish homes and do the dirty work for them. Which is very classic, you know, for anti-Semites. They'll take Jews and use them to do the dirty work for them. Which is really sad, because at different times there were Jews who were forced to do the dirty work, and at different times there were actually traitors in the Jewish nation that caused other Jews to die, right? And we see traitors today, like Norman Finkelstein, for example, who stands with our enemies who want to slaughter
Don't
us.
get me wrong now. I'm as open-minded as the next guy. No one's ever accused me of prejudice. But there's something funny about those people. Hi, how you doing? Nice to see you.
have a real nice evening now.
Creepy.
Not that I've got anything personal against these people. You understand?
On the contrary, some of them are real nice guys. It's just that those lights of theirs
Make them different from everybody else. Kind of sets up a barrier between people.
sounds a little dangerous. What if it spreads? They'd be better off without those lights, wouldn't they?
Much better. And as soon as possible, too.
Get out of here. You just go home, please. Just get out of here. Just get out of here.
Oh,
The Jew trying to be like a Greek.
hi. Terrific party. Where are you guys going?
How would you like a rare opportunity to do something really important for the security of the Empire?
You mean it? Hi. Good evening.
Get out of here, please.
You know, there...
Now, give me a break. Now,
Bad for the eyes, kids. You just hand in those lights, and we'll give you better ones.
That was just the beginning. One by one, the lights were being stamped out.
Oh, baby, Lily, la la la.
Good evening. Let's face it, ma'am. Those old lights are outdated. Nobody uses them anymore. Now, you've probably seen these. After all, the whole world is using them. They're newer and better.
This is like intimidation, you know, you enter someone's home. She's alone with her daughter, her babies, and like this is intimidation, you know?
Yes, at home, on the job, everywhere you look. Everybody's switching to... Come on, get out of here, will you? Oh, come on, give me a break. I gotta get through this. Excuse me. Come
That's a
on.
violation of the fire code.
I don't have time for this.
Now they're entering people's
Sorry.
homes.
Soon, the lights weren't safe anywhere.
Enter the Holy Temple.
Hold it.
He has a light. He has a part of the Torah with him, part of his Jewishness.
Get rid of it.
Then something, a lot of the time, something wakes up within him, his Jewish soul, you know? That's something that is very known in the Jewish culture. A lot of the time when a Jew completely rejects the traditions and the Torah and everything and takes on like crazy ideas and they become completely secular or they become, you know, there are Jews who become Christian at the end of the day, right? Like my grandfather, he was a communist, my great-grandfather. He was a communist all his life, and then when my father was leaving Russia with his mother to get out as a refugee and come to the free world, right, to the America, his grandfather looked at him and with tears in his eyes, he says to him, "If I could, I would run barefoot to Jerusalem." After all, like, rejecting the tradition and rejecting religion and being into all the whole communist ideas, in the end, at the end of his life, he wanted to return to the traditions, right? Because his Jewish soul woke up because, right, like the soul of the Jew, they yearn for the Torah, right? And to be connected with our heritage. And so this is something that seems to have happened to this guy.
Hey! Stop!
It's terrifying. Yeah. And so,
Hey, little girl, don't touch that.
right, so like this scene, I think it represents the story about Hannah and her 7 sons, right? There was a woman who, in the time of the Greeks, right, when they were like forcing Jews to bow down to idols, right, to graven images and idols and deities, and a lot of Jews, they refused to bow down and they gave their life, right? They said, bow down to the idol or we'll kill you. So Hannah and her 7 sons, right, they were all called before the Greek emperor, and they were told, if you don't bow down to the idols, you'll be killed. So the oldest to the youngest son, who was a child, right, like a small child, 5 years old, perhaps even younger, were forced to, they said, you bow down to the idol or we will kill you. And every single son gave up their life rather than to get rid of their own faith, to turn on their own faith, rather than turn on their own faith and bow down to idols and betray the Jewish Almighty One Invisible God. They said they will not bow, and they were tortured to death and they were murdered, all in front of their mother, right? Then Hannah, she went and threw herself off a roof because she was in so much pain. She couldn't handle the pain of losing all her 7 sons, and right? And so this, I think, represents that story, right, where they would go after little kids, you know, like they'll go after children and they'll kill children, and it's very similar to like Hamas, you know, the way Hamas would murder babies in their bed just because they're Jewish. So it's similar evils.
Stop! Come back here! Why don't you kids just give me that one little light you got there, and you can have all these shiny ones instead. What do you say?
So well done.
When the new rulers of Jerusalem saw that they couldn't persuade the people to give up the lights, they decided to get rid of the people instead.
Sound familiar? Sound familiar?
If that's the way you...
Does that sound familiar? Right? Our enemies, they just want to kill us. Like, what's wrong with them? Just leave us alone. Damn it.
want it.
Hold on. Hold on, let me check if this is working.
They decided to get rid of the people.
Yeah, it's working. System works. Hallelujah.
The people fled to the hills outside the city.
Basically, it was a complicated story because a lot of women fucked with the Romans, right? A lot of the Jewish women, they fucked with the Romans, like they took the Romans down themselves, right? Like one woman, her name was Judith. She went and she killed a Roman general, right? And she brought his head back to the high priest, and she said, "Now's the time to strike." And she was one of the wars at this time, right? And they won against the mighty Greek Empire because they got the general's head, right, because of a woman. And that's why Jewish women are commanded to either watch the menorah being lit, or to actually light it themselves, right? So, because we participated in this miracle. Hi Robert, happy Hanukkah, happy holiday. Thank you for wishing me that, and if you celebrate Christmas, happy Christmas to you. You spelled it fine. It's totally cool. I think you did a good job. I think it's just the H at the end. But, like, religious Jews will spell it with the CH. Happy Hanukkah. Like, CHANUKAH, I think. This is the Holy Temple.
When they returned to the city, the people found the menorah cold and empty. with no lights to fill it.
They're looking for oil. With the, like I explained before, they had to find oil for the rededication of the Holy Temple to light the lamp, right, the menorah, which I lit here. And it's almost actually lit out. And they had to have the high priest's seal had to be on the oil, right, so that it's not desecrated, that it's pure oil, right? But the Greeks, they desecrated all the oil. Every single oil that they came upon the seal was broken. So it wasn't kosher for the Holy Temple, and that's the miracle why we light 8 candles for the 8 days of the menorah. Because it lasted, they found only one sealed kosher oil to last 1 day, and it lasted 8 days. And that is why we celebrate for 8 days. So here's my my menorah. Wait, where are we? Where is it? That's the menorah. See it? And today's the first day, so I only light one candle. Okay, let's continue. Right? And we found this kosher. Beautiful.
So every year, about the time when all these things happen, there's a festival of lights.
It's called Hanukkah lights. You can find it on YouTube.
Now, so when, just don't get your feet wet, okay, Arnie? Please? Okay. Yeah.
Like, basically for centuries, over centuries, right? Hundreds of years, the Jews celebrated this holiday, right? And, like, literally every single one of our holidays is, our prayers, our holidays are all about Jerusalem, 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 right? Israel, Jerusalem, the Holy Temple, the part of the Talmud and the Pentateuch, right? The Tanakh, it's all about commandments that should be done in Israel, right? And so, for anybody to say that Jews don't have a connection to Israel, they're a bunch of fools because they're denying history. But yes, there are people who try to deny that we're the real Jews, but what is a real Jew, right? I've made videos about that, so... guy, you know? The guy that became Greek when he became...
Ever since that time, there
Whatever,
has
if you watch
always
the
been
video,
a
you'll know.
festival of lights. There's a festival of lights because people kept the light and treasured it.
Beautiful. It's good music. Love it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right, so yeah. So that is the story of Hanukkah, right? And right, we can, if you want, we can, what I wanted to do was to talk about the dreidel, right? So if any of you saw my other video where I posted today about the African migrants who were accusing Jews of doing gambling and killing people and stuff, whatever, because they're anti-Semitic, but the only type of gambling that we'll ever do is with the dreidel. I just thought about it now, right? Because this game of dreidel, how it works, right? So I have 2 dreidels. Where's my other dreidel? I bought it especially for Hanukkah, right? Each one will cost like 2 shekel. So, right, the game goes like this. The game goes like this, right? Let me show you the game. So, okay, so here it has letters, right? Hebrew letters. And each letter represents something else, right? So, for instance, we spin the dreidel. First of all, why do we use dreidels, right? Where did the idea of dreidels come from? The idea of dreidels come from when the Greeks were forbidding the Jews from learning the Torah, right? The Jews, if they got caught learning Torah, they would get killed, right? So a lot of the time when the Greeks would come and find a Jew and suspect them of learning Torah, the Jew would quickly hide their Torah scrolls and they would pretend to be playing a game of this, the dreidel game, right? So that is why till today we commemorate this. And so the way we play it today is we spin the dreidel, everybody gets a dreidel, right? And everybody has Hanukkah geld, right? Everybody has money on Hanukkah. And so, for instance, let me get some geld. Let me get some money so you can understand. Okay? I have coins, so let's do this. Okay? Let's do it properly. Okay, so let's do this properly. Okay. Oh, it's a little bit dirty, but whatever. Okay. So here we have the pot of gold, right? This is the money. Everybody gets, from the pot of gold, everybody gets a certain amount of money. They get the same amount, right? So, say there's like 3 people, right? And here's the pot of gold, right? So everybody, number 1, this guy spins a dreidel, right? Okay, Gimel. Gimel means you get all. You get everything that's inside. Gimel means you get everything that's inside. So this person will get everything, right? I think, right? And so then this person will spin the dreidel. Let's see where it falls out onto. It's like pretty much a gambling game. Like whatever it falls out onto. Gimel. Oh, so he also gets it all? Wait a second. Okay, so I forgot how the game works. I have to play dreidel. Okay, 1 second. I can't believe I forgot. Because I grew up with this, okay? So, how to play dreidel. How to play dreidel. Okay, so, how to play dreidel. Okay? I'm ashamed, I can't remember. Right? So, nun, the letter nun, right? I don't know if you can see. The letter nun, this letter, means you receive nothing from the pile of gold, right? Hey means you get, the player takes half of what's in the treasure, right? Half of the pot. Gimel means the player takes the entire pot of gold, right? And shin, the player puts one piece into the pot, right? So this is the pot, right? If you see, this is the pot. So, for instance, right? So I spin the dreidel, this guy spins the dreidel, gets hay. Hay, the player takes half. So the player will take half of the pot of gold. And, okay, so everybody puts in an equal amount. So if if there's a lot of money in there, then the letter it lands on, you can end up with all the money, right? So then this person goes and decides what letter he's going to get. So everybody's playing, the whole family's playing, all the friends. Nun means you get nothing. You receive nothing, and the next player spins. So this guy spins the dreidel. And pay. Nud, gimel, hey, shin. Yeah, so shin, okay, like I explained before, pay and shin, it's interchangeable because if you're in America, it's a different letter. So, pay, the player puts one piece into the pot, right? And then it keeps going, right? Nun, the player receives nothing, doesn't get any money. Let's see what this guy will get. Nothing. What will this guy get? Gimel, he gets everything. He gets the whole entire pot. The whole entire pot of gold, this person gets it, right? But then there's still people that have money, right? So then they put in probably like one. Each time the pot is emptied out, each player puts in one piece. And so the game can continue. It could be, you don't have to play with money. You can play with food, you can play with candy, you can play with nuts, you can play with money, right? And then the game continues until somebody loses, right? Until somebody loses all their money and then they're out. And until the winner gets everything, right? So that's how the game goes. In most families, that's how the game goes. So it's a lot of fun, right? So I don't know how to play it with myself. Do you know what I mean? So that's the game. If I had people over, we'd play this game of dreidel, right? And then the other thing that on Hanukkah, what we do is we give out Hanukkah gelt. Is like the older person will give to all the kids, like however much money they give, $1 each day or whatever, and gifts, and they eat, because the holiday is about oil. The miracle is all about oil, so therefore we're supposed to eat a lot of oily foods. So donuts, right? It's customary for people to eat lots of donuts because it's full of fried in oil. And then it's customary to eat latkes, which is like potato type of thing where you fry it flat and it's very yummy, and you eat it with the applesauce, and because it's very oily. And so, what else? And that's basically it, right? Like and then you speak about the holiday, you speak about the stories of what happened in Hanukkah, and you sing songs, and it's a lot of fun, right? So that's the holiday of Hanukkah, right? It's very exciting. So if you want, we can, I can tell you a story about a woman who brought down the Greeks, right? A Jewish woman. Should we do that? Yeah? Okay, so let's see. The Jewish woman who brought the Greeks down. The woman who ignited the Hasmonean Rebellion, right? So the woman who ignited the Hasmonean Rebellion, very few know her story. It isn't taught in schools, and certainly not in kindergartens, but according to the Midrash, Hannah, daughter of Matisyahu, sister of the Maccabees, was a key figure in the Hanukkah story. What does the Midrash tell us of the woman who stood up to protect her Jewish sisters? How did she use her wedding day to spark the fire of rebellion in her brothers? According to the Midrash, the entire Hanukkah miracle is based on the act of one brave and today largely forgotten woman who dared to speak aloud when everyone else knew but would not say. What everyone knew but wouldn't say. Her declaration led her brothers to start a rebellion. She was the true heroine and instigator of the festival of Hanukkah. Her story is not taught in schools, not in kindergartens, right? But she's the sister of the Maccabees. According to the Midrash, the Jews, then living under Greek Seleucid rule, had remained silent for 3 years. 3 years in which every woman who married would first be raped by the local Greek governor before she could enter her husband's house. This is how the Midrash describes it. When the Greeks saw that Israel was not affected by their decree, they stood and decreed upon them a bitter and ugly decree that a bride would not go into her husband on her wedding night, but rather to the local commander. It's disgusting, right, what they did to the woman. It is awful to imagine how many women underwent this violation and humiliation. The Midrash tells us that the men of the Hasmonean family did nothing, and the women of Israel fell victim again and again to this abuse. Then came the wedding day of Matisyahu, the Hasmonean's own daughter, Hannah. This time, Hannah, my name is Hannah, decided to put an end to the ongoing atrocities. In the middle of the wedding banquet, while all the distinguished and important guests were eating and enjoying themselves, she stood up and ripped off her wedding dress, leaving herself naked in front of her family and her friends. And when everyone was sitting down to eat, Hannah, the daughter of Matisyahu, stood up from her palanquin and clapped her hands, one on the other, and tore off her royal garment, and stood before all of Israel, revealed before her father and her mother and her groom. At first her brothers reacted with anger and shock. They wanted to kill her for having disgraced them and for shaming the family and herself. But she in turn scolded them for turning a blind eye, all the while knowing what awaited her that night at the governor's palace. Not one of them had raised a finger. Not one of them had stood up to protect her dignity. She reprimanded her brothers for being angry at her nakedness in front of them, even as they remained calm at the thought of her having to go later that night to the governor who would sexually assault her. She said, "Listen, my brothers and uncles. So what? I stand naked before you righteous men with no sexual transgression, and yet you get all incensed? And you do not become incensed about sending me into the hands of an uncircumcised man who will abuse me?" She forced them to face up to the bitter truth. According to the Midrash, this was the moment her Maccabee brothers first raised the flag of rebellion. It was pretty disgusting, right? Like, a lot of the time, regardless of, even today, there are sometimes bad things happening within communities, and a lot of the times everybody turns a blind eye because they just don't want to face it and they don't want to deal with it, and they make excuses just so that, they try to legitimize whatever's going on, and sometimes it takes a brave woman to stand up and do something like this. And throughout history, it's always the women that create rebellion and save people, right? The first question that comes to mind when someone hears the story, did this really happen? After all, this isn't a story that is told as part of the typical Hanukkah celebration. We know the story of the miracle of the jar of oil. We know all about the victory of the Maccabees over the Greeks and the heroism of Judah the Maccabee, but the story of the woman who incited the rebellion, or the story of the sexual exploitation that was behind the uprising, isn't common knowledge. Among the Ashkenazi community of Europe, the story of Hannah, whose name may derive from the name of the Hanukkah holiday itself, appears in some sources, but she is occasionally referred to anonymously as Bat Hasmonaim, like the daughter of one of the rebels, right? A Hasmonean daughter. In the communities of North Africa, on the other hand, they tell the story of Judith, who beheaded the Assyrian general Holofernes, and whose heroism is recorded in a slightly different way in the apocryphal book of Judith, right? So we can talk about Judith, Yehudith, right, too, but this story seems like I never heard the story until now. I never heard the story. This is the first time I'm actually hearing it. I'm reading it. Wow. I didn't know the story. I have to share it with my family, okay? And whose heroism is recorded in a slightly different way in the apocryphal book of Judith. Some researchers suggest that these two women, Bat Hasmonaim and Judith, are one and the same. I don't believe that. I believe there were a few women who did good things, right? I think the more interesting question we need to ask ourselves is, why hasn't the story been told more often? I believe that the story of Hannah, daughter of Matisyahu, has remained hidden or suppressed because of its complexity. Telling this story, a tale of silent sexual violence, can be a disturbing experience. It is much easier to tell the story of a military triumph of good over evil, as we light our menorahs and eat our jelly donuts. Exactly. Like, a lot of these stories, like, nobody wants to talk about it. Right? It's unpleasant, and people turned a blind eye because they just didn't know what to do. They weren't strong enough to fight the evil people that were, like, raping women, right? So, but Hannah's story is an important one, and its telling is long overdue. It is a story that can bring about a real change even today. Rashi's commentary, we spoke about Rashi another time, on the lighting of the Hanukkah candles in the tractate Shabbat, offers additional evidence for the significance of Hannah's role in the Hanukkah narrative. So there's a few Hannahs, like, so this is the Hannah that she inspired her brothers and her family to go and ride against and take down the Greeks. And then we spoke about Hannah and her 7 sons who refused to bow down and cowered to the Greeks, and they gave their lives for it, right? So they were martyred. And they were real martyrs, not like, the Islamist martyrs of today. They're martyrs, right? So, so the question is asked whether women are obliged to fulfill the commandment of lighting Hanukkah candles. The answer is affirmative. Women are obligated, and the Talmud's explanation for this special obligation is that women were partners in the Hanukkah miracle, and are therefore also obligated in lighting the candles that commemorate the miracle. Rashi writes of the Hanukkah miracle and Hannah's role in it. Since the Greeks decreed upon all the virgins getting married to have intercourse with the high official first, and the miracle happened through a woman, Rashi, the great commentator of the Bible and Talmud, offers here a concise interpretation of the female heroism behind the Hanukkah story and its female protagonist. He makes the claim that a woman brought this miracle, and for that very reason, to this day, women are expected to light Hanukkah candles. Right? So, of course, this is not proof. So this here, I don't know if you can see this picture. It's a invitation to a Maccabee festival in Germany, Hanukkah Eve. This is before the Holocaust, in 1903. The postcard collection that is found in the National Library of Israel, right? So, yes. Continuing on, right? Of course, this is not proof that the story happened necessarily, but it is evidence that it is not new either. Rather, it is an ancient story reflecting a familiar reality from various times in Jewish history, passed down in Jewish tradition. The story of Hannah, daughter of Matisyahu, is a harsh one, and it remains hidden and untold. But in my view, it is the most important story there is. Hannah, my name, expresses the voice of silenced women throughout the generations, right up to this very day. She shows us how important it is for us to stand up for each other. She reminds us to support and help these women whose voices have been taken from them through violence. She teaches us that sometimes the bearing of the naked truth, no matter how painful, is the only way to create change. Hannah has a female hero, a hero whose strong voice resonates in today's painful Israeli reality, a hero who implores us to look around and see who is in need of help. If we dare to place her story in the center of our discourse, if we dare to tell of her brave act, we can strengthen female voices that choose not to remain silent, and give voice to the wronged women who have been silenced throughout history. People are like, oh, please, they're commentators who are insulted by the story. People are commenting here. They're literally, like, insulted by the story. Yeah. You have a great day and holiday season. Thank you. People are insulted by the story. They're like, oh, please ignore, I don't believe the story. A woman in those days would not expose herself like that. Also, so many Torah stories about women have sexual elements. It sounds like a generic story about Christian women saints. Whatever. Okay, so, let's go and see the Hannah, the daughter of Matisyahu, right? So then there's the story, like, there were a few women that were actually the ones who helped instigate a rebellion, right? The attempted rape of Hannah? I never saw this. We see this trope used in another source more or less contemporary with that of the hybrid scullion, the Shelet of Rab Ahai Ga'an. Here he names the bride Hannah. The account begins with a midrash and a verse from the Psalms. So it's a true story, it seems, because it's written in the midrash. Their words shall pierce their own hearts, and their bows shall be broken. Rabbi Yochanan said, these are these are the Greeks who made war with the Hasmonean house. Okay, so the She'elta then explains this war in greater detail, beginning the story with a violent and graphic description of the attempted rape. For at the time when the Greeks went into the sanctuary, defiling all the oil in the sanctuary, Yochanan the high priest had a daughter. Hannah was her name. There was no one as beautiful as her in all the world, and she was betrothed to Eleazar, the son of the Hasmonean, whose father was a warrior. Right? So, anointed for battle, one of the leaders of the Greeks came and seized her by her ponytail, spread out a Torah scroll, and tried to come upon her in the presence of Eleazar, her betrothed. Oh my god, wow. The opening of the legend is rife with historical anomalies, blending the Talmudic account of the defiled oil in the temple with the story of the Hasmonean revolt against the Greek rule. Hannah here is identified not as the daughter of Matisyahu, but of Yochanan the high priest, and she is engaged to Eleazar, the son of the Hasmonean, who was the anointed for battle. The reader or listener is meant to doubly and deeply gasp in horror at the image of the Greek official grabbing the maiden by her hair to rape her on an unfurled Torah scroll, shocked at the imminent desecration of the Torah spread out like a sheet. The audience is held in suspense. The young woman, like the Torah, is in danger of desecration, for the rape would make her forbidden to her husband, the Cohen priest. Israel, the people, looked to the mountains in the east, thinking maybe Persian armies would come, as it says in Psalm 121.1. Shall we lift our eyes to the hills from where our help will come? The Jews initially looked to foreign rule in the east to save them. To the Persians, really? As if this would solve the immediate plight of the young woman about to be violated on the scroll? Perhaps the author, situated in Babylon, is mocking those who rely on the foreign support to save them from oppression, and urging his own followers not to trust outsiders to come to their defense. The rhetorical question in Psalms 121.1, Esa enai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri, I lift my eyes to the hills, from where will my help come? Is rendered as a question in the first person plural. Shall we lift our eyes and present it as a misguided appeal to foreign aid instead of to God, as in the Psalms? Ezri me'im Hashem, oiseh shamayim va'aretz. My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. Yet God does not help those who turn to outsiders, but those who trust in God. The Hasmonean father of Eleazar said to the high priest, does it not say, cursed is the one who trusts in man, and blessed are those who trust in the Lord, whose trust is the Lord? Jeremiah 7.5. He, Yochanan, the high priest, said to him, yes, but what do you think we should do? He, the Hasmonean, said to him, I and my 7 sons, and you and your 3 sons, we are like 12 tribes of Israel. We can trust that God will perform a miracle for us, for the sake of his name. Hearing this interchange between his father and the Hasmonean and the Yochanan, the high priest, Eleazar is bolstered to save his bride from being violated. When Eleazar heard this, he was empowered and took out his sword and cut off the head of the Greek, and said, my assistance comes from the Lord, creator of heaven and earth. Like Judith in the Apocrypha, who slays the Assyro-Babylonian general Holofernes, Eleazar chops off the head of the would-be rapists. In contrast to Judith, however, the young woman in this account is a totally passive damsel in distress. In another version of the legend, however, Hannah is given a voice. Right, so there's different versions to the story, right? This is one of them. I'm more inclined to believe in maybe all of them happened. I don't know, right? Like, maybe all of them. Thank you, Robert. Right, so Hannah gains a voice and saves herself. The She'eltut contains a second version of the tale, which builds on the version in the hybrid Scholian, but is much larger. A variant of this tale, which we will look at below, was published in modern collections as Midrash Ma'aseh Hanukkah, homily about what happened on Hanukkah, or simply Midrash Le Hanukkah, a homily for Hanukkah. They say that in the days of the Greeks, this scripture ensured that they would challenge the secret of Israel. And so they did, and so they said, come, let us renew decrees against them, such that they will reject their God and believe in our idolatry. In this retelling of the oppressive Greek rule before the Hasmonean revolt, the king imposes a series of seemingly absurd decrees to determine the Jews' belief in their own religion and to facilitate their acceptance of the Greek god. They issued a decree that anyone in Israel who made a bolt or lock on their doors would be impaled by the sword. Why? So that there would be no honor and no privacy, modesty, since any house that does not have a door does not have honor or modesty, for anyone may enter day or night, right? So, vulnerable to hooligans, highwaymen, and boyars, the Jews take it to the reductio ad absurdum and remove their doors altogether. I'm sorry. Wow. Like, I am gobsmacked. I'm shocked. I never heard this before. I really never heard this. When Israel saw that the decree was enforced, they got rid of a lot of the doors of their houses, and they could not eat or drink or have sex, use their beds on account of robbers and Greek mercenaries and burglars, and their eyes did not see sleep night or day. And through them the scripture was fulfilled, and you'll be in fear night and day. In the end, the houses of the Israelites no longer served as sanctuaries of modesty or decorum, like the eye of Big Brother in George Orwell's dystopian novel, 1984. The people were totally deprived of their dignity, integrity, their sense of private self. God then explains to them that the suffering is a consequence of neglecting the mitzvah of mezuzah. Right, we have on our door parchment, right? But they would derive benefit from having no doors later, right? And they endured this decree for 3 years. Can you imagine? When the Greeks saw that they were able to withstand the decree and that not one of them failed on account of this terrible thing, they rose and decreed other decrees and sent out an announcement. Any man in Israel that has an ox or sheep will engrave on its horns that it has no share in the God of Israel. Why did they do this? So that Israel would not eat meat or drink milk or eat cheese, and they would not be able to plow. They, the Greeks, said, "We know that Israel, will not be able to withstand this decree." While the Greeks believed that this would force the Jews into submission, the oppressed again undermined the decree by taking it to extremes. When Israel heard of it, they were extremely upset, and they said, "Heaven forbid we rebel against our God." They stood and sold all of their animals, pure and impure, and the Israelites would go on foot. This scripture was fulfilled with them. I have seen slaves on horseback and princes walking on foot like slaves. God then explains to the Jews that this is a punishment for not bringing sacrifices during the pilgrimage festival, but they would not derive benefit from the earlier decree, since because they had no doors, kosher wild animals could not come into their homes at night, and the Jews could slaughter them and eat them, and thus have the food the Greeks hoped to withhold from them. I don't understand this. Oh, okay, so if they had to brand their animals and make them unkosher in some way, because they had no doors on their homes, wild animals would come in, and they can use the wild kosher animals because their own animals, which were defiled by what was, they were commanded to desecrate their animals to make it unkosher for them to eat. So therefore, wild animals came, and they were able to use those wild animals, not their animals, right? So because their doors they had no doors, right? So, and the Jews would slaughter them and eat them, and thus have the food the Greeks hoped to withhold from them. When the Greeks saw that they were able to withstand the decree, they stood and decreed that anyone whose wife goes to immerse in the mikvah will be impaled with a sword. And any Syrian Greek who sees her going to the mikvah, she is his. The mikvah is the ritual bath, right? Before a woman has sex with her husband, she has to be clean from her period and immerse in the mikvah to cleanse herself. And they outlawed this what the woman had to do, right, for the commandment to be pure. And so they said that she will be his if they caught her going to mikvah, and her children will be sold as slaves. Again, instead of sinning, the Jews demonstrate fortitude. When the Israelites saw this, they refrained from sexual relations. Can you imagine how strong you have to be to resist that, right? Like, wow. And when the Greeks heard this, they said, "Since the Israelites are not using their beds, we should take them the woman." They tried to desecrate the Jewish women in the worst ways possible. Can you imagine? They tried to crush the Jewish people's spirit. It's unbelievable. Wow. So when the Israelites saw this, they went back to their wives without immersion, against the woman's will. They, the women, said, "Master of the universe, this is without our consent and not for our well-being, for a woman does not want to lie under her husband, not in accord with her due time or pleasure." God said to them, "Because you did this unintentionally, I will purify you." And so God opened for each one of them a spring inside the home, and the woman would immerse within the house. In fulfillment of Scripture, with joy you will draw water from the wells of salvation. And another verse, "The Lord has washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion," set in Isaiah 4.4, right? When the Greeks threatened to take the women, right? Where are we? When the Greeks threatened to take the women, the Jewish husbands approached their wives against their will, right? And the women cried out to God, who answered them by causing natural springs to gush forth from within their homes so that they could purify them. Notably, it is only when the women are on the verge of being raped by their so-called raped, right, by their own husbands, that God intervenes with a miracle, right? Right? When the Greeks saw that the Israelites were not feeling the burden of their decrees, they issued a bitter and foul decree that no bride would enter the wedding canopy on the night of her wedding without having first gone to the governor of that place. Here again, the Jews show their muster, and with sadness forego marriage. But again, not all Jews were able to withstand it, right? There were many Jews who were called Yavanim, I think, and they didn't care for the Jewish law, right? But these are the Jews who clung to the Torah, right, and the Torah law. And so, when the Israelites heard, they wrung their hands and lost their strength and refrained from marrying. The daughters of Israel would mature and get old as virgins, fulfilling the verse, "Her virgins grieve and she is bitter." And the Greeks would sexually abuse the daughters of Israel, and this went on for 3 years and 8 months, until the act of one daughter of Matisyahu, the high priest, who was engaged to a Hasmonean son, and Elazar was his name. When the day of the celebration came, they sat her on a palanquin for a litter, Aparian. And when the time for the feast came, all the elders of Israel gathered in honor of Matisyahu, the high priest, and the son of Hasmonai. For there were none in that generation as great as them. When they sat down to eat, Hannah, the daughter of Matisyahu, stood up atop the palanquin, raised her arms and ripped her garments, and stood before all of Israel exposed, and before her father and mother, and her father-in-law. The Midrash stretches the bounds of credulity. While her family blissfully feasts on the celebration, she is driven to an act of desperation, knowing the fate that would befall her. So, like, that night, she would be raped by some creep, right? That was in the Greek, in office, right? She tears her clothes in the middle of the celebration and exposes herself to her family and guests. Yet this public display of nudity was too much for her family. When her brothers saw this, they were ashamed and bent their heads to the ground and tore their clothing and stood up to kill her. Can you imagine? Like, they'd rather kill her than be ashamed, but, like, then she says, right, like the story goes, you don't care that I'm going to go and get raped, yet you're upset of my nakedness, right? Their extreme reaction derives from her status as the daughter of a priest, Bat Kohen or Kohenet, whose sexuality must be strongly guarded, while her brothers are excessively zealous for her public modesty. They can somehow live with the private reality that she will be raped after the ceremony by the Greek governor. Hannah then proceeds to confront all those at the wedding feast as complicit with the Greek edict and exposes the patriarchal and underpinning of rape culture, to borrow a modern phrase, right? So she said to them, "Listen, my brothers and my uncles, now that I have stood before you righteous ones, naked with no sin upon me, you are seized with zeal against me, but you are not so zealous on my behalf." I'm surprised I listened to her. You know what I'm saying? Sending me to this uncircumcised one so he could abuse me. Should you not learn from Shimon and Levi, the brothers of Dinah, who were only 2, yet were zealous for their sister, and killed the city of Shechem and risked their lives for the integrity of God, and God came to their assistance and did not destroy them? Yet you are 5 brothers, Yehuda, Yochanan, Yonatan, Shimon, Elazar, and over 200 young priests. Place your trust in God, and God will assist you, as it is said, for nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few, right? So, fashioned in the image of a learned rabbinic Jew, she makes a fortiori argument and exposes their hypocrisy. If you're willing to kill me on account of public nudity, should you not be willing to kill the Greeks on account of their intention to rape me? She backs this up with a statement about the importance of faith in God and a reminder that she has more brothers in the room than Dinah, Jacob's daughter, had in avenging her debasement. She adds an ironic barb. Shimon and Levi avenged their sister, Dinah, after she was raped, while these 5 brothers and the 200 young priests would willingly give their sister over to the uncircumcised one to be raped. She thus urges them to seize the moment. Having taken the leadership role with her brothers, which her brothers and father temporarily abdicated, she ends with a prayer to God. And she opened her mouth, crying, and said, "Lord of the universe, if you will not do this for our sake, do it for the holiness of your name, of your great name that is upon us, and we will rise up in our vengeance." From a feminist reading perspective, her speech galvanizes male pride, deflecting them away from punishing her for exposing herself into protecting her from potential sexual violation. Right, so, like, it's really sad because in many cultures, right, like, the idea of women Like, just like when women are violated, like, a lot of people will just turn a blind eye and just not talk about it. They won't speak about it. They will keep it a secret, and they will let the violation continue, right? Because it's uncomfortable, because they don't want to stand up for the woman or the child being violated, right? And it's really sad. Like, this is why reading this kind of thing is so important to, to understand morality, right? What is moral? Oh, hi, Ergo Somi, thank you. Right? So, the custodial role of men over female sexuality as both controlling and protective are flip sides of the same patriarchal coin. The honor of the family is reflected in her sexual purity, both in her rhetoric to the men and in her prayer to the Lord of the universe. God's sacred name is contingent on the integrity of the daughter's body. Her plea motivates her brothers to the proper path. At that moment, her brothers were seized with zeal on her behalf, and they said, "Let us go and get advice as to what to do." They consulted with one another and said, "Let us take our sister, and we will go to the great king, and we will tell him, 'Our sister is the daughter of the high priest, and there is no one in Israel greater than our father. And we see that it is not fitting that she should lie with a mere governor, but rather with the king, who is as great as we are. And then we will enter the palace, and we will kill him and leave. We will start with his servants and relatives. Then God will help us and exalt us.'" Taking their cue from Shimon and Levi's deceit of Shechem, the brothers decide to trick Antiochus, playing to male pride, and use their sister as an opportunity to assassinate him. She will usher in the floodgates of Hasmoneans, who will rout the Greek overlords, having finally decided to stand up to the Greeks and to trust in God, and the ruse succeeds, and God indeed made a great salvation for them. And they heard a divine voice, a bat call, come out of the Holy of Holies, saying, "All Israel, the young priests, Talila, Lit, the Lamb, have been victorious against Antiochus." The victory is declared within the inner sanctum by a divine voice, affirming the external military victory without. As the Midrash opened with the violation of the boundaries of the Jewish home, no lock or bolt on the doors to guard their privacy or honor, now it ends with a vision of the integrity of inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies. Throughout this tale, the woman's body serves as a site of adjudication for the collective honor of Israel and the integrity of God's name. A female Trojan horse, Hannah becomes key to defeating the Greek overlords from within. The passage ends with the victorious cry of a bat kol, a divine voice, literally a daughter's echo from heaven to the high priest. Antiochus has been defeated. So the Holy of Holies remains intact, private, exclusively accessible to the high priest on Yom Kippur, only because Hannah was willing to expose herself to challenge her brother's hypocrisy and galvanize them to action. The integrity of the temple is mirrored in the integrity of the daughter. Hannah's role from passive to active. In all three midrashim quoted above, the impetus for the rebellion is the attempted rape of Matisyahu's daughter, Hannah. Yet the story in the third version is quite different in how it conceives her role. While in the first two, hybrid Skolion and She'elet, the daughter is passive victim of her fathers and brothers are the active agents who saved her. In the third version, Hannah is powerful, smart, and decisive woman, taking her fate and that of all other Jews into her own hands. It is her command of rhetoric, morality, Jewish law, halacha, Bible, and drama that forces the hand of her brothers, who following her lead succeed in freeing the Jews from the Greeks and their humiliating decrees. The thing is that, what was the first story? I think I missed the first story of right? We saw the two stories, and I didn't see the first story, right? So, Maccabee recounts how Matisyahu instigated a rebellion against the Greek out of zealotry against Jewish idolatry. Later Midrashim tell how Matisyahu's daughter Hannah goaded her father and brothers into fighting the Greeks to protect her from being raped by the local governor. Matisyahu's rebellion in 1 Maccabees, one version of the Hanukkah story in which Judah Maccabee and his followers led the Hasmonean revolt and reclaimed the Jewish temple from the Syrian Greeks, is recounted in the books of 1 and 2 Maccabees. Number 1, Maccabee tells how Matisyahu instigates the rebellion. Antioch Epiphanes 5, king of Seleucid Greek Empire from 175 to 164 BCE, pillages the temple, sets an idol up on the altar, and issues a series of oppressive decrees against Jews against Jewish observance, which persists for 3 years. All this brought Matithias and his sons to tear their clothing, put on sackcloth, and mourn greatly. The breaking point comes when a Greek officer erects a pagan altar in the town of Modin and urges Matisyahu as a magnet of the community to be the first to offer a sacrifice. But Matisyahu refuses. Another Jew steps forward to offer the sacrifice, and this prompts Matisyahu to act. And Matisyahu saw this, and he became zealous, and his kidneys became stirred up, and his anger arose in judgment, and running, he slaughtered him in the altar, and killed the agent of the king, who was forcing them to sacrifice at that time, and tore down the altar. Matisyahu's zealotry here resonates with other biblical scenes. Moses galvanizes the Levites to kill those who worship the golden calf, and during the apostasy of Baal Peor, Pinchas slays Zimri, son of Salu, head of the Shemonite tribe, and Cosbi, daughter of Sur, a Midianite princess. With that, the Maccabean revolts began. The father, his 5 sons, and their followers took to the hills to wage guerrilla warfare against their Greek rulers and the Jewish Hellenizers. Like I said, like the Hellenists. Yeah, the Hellenists, they were Jews who joined the Greeks. And as the liturgy notes, caused the strong to fall into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few, and the impure into the hands of the pure. Adding to the story, over time, the core ancient story was embellished with dramatic accounts of martyrdom, such as the woman and her 7 sons, and miracles such as the little cruse of pure oil found in the sanctuary, which lasted 8 days. One relatively unknown elaboration involved Matisyahu's daughter, Hannah, right? So this is the first story that I didn't read yet, right? So let's see if I read it in another way, right? So one of the earliest sources to tell the story of Matisyahu's daughter is the hybrid Scholion on Megillat Tainus. The story is found as an explanation for why the 17th of El is considered a joyous day. Megillat Tainus itself explains that this is because the Romans left Jerusalem, but the hybrid Scholion sets the story up in the earlier Greek period. Right? They would put military encampments, Latin castra, in the cities to rape the brides, who only afterward could marry their husbands. So no one wanted to get married because of the military camps. They then started to get married in secret. But Matisyahu, son of Yochanan, the high priest, had a daughter, and when it came time for her to marry, an officer came to defile her, and they did not allow him. Instead, Matisyahu and his sons were zealous, and they came out stronger than the Greek kingdom, who fell into their hands, and they, the Hasmoneans, killed them, the Greeks. According to this source, the Greeks exercised the right of the first night. Can you imagine? Out of fear, the Jews abstained from marriage or staged weddings covertly, but the imminent nuptials of Matisyahu's daughter, here unnamed, proved to be too prominent to conceal. It was this outrage that caused Hasmonean rebellion. Anxiety over the defilement of the daughter undergirds many legends centered around national pride and serves as motif throughout the Bible, as in the debasement of Dinah in Genesis 34 and the rape of the concubine in Judges 19. It is deployed in literature such as Sir Walter Scott, Rob Roy, and John Grisham's A Time to Kill, 1989, and in films such as Braveheart, 1995, which tells the story of the Scottish rebellion of William Wallace against England's King Edward I from 1297 CE, instigated by resistance to a British prima nocta decree. While violence against women during periods of oppression was surely widespread, it is questionable whether this practice was ever enacted. Rather, the rape of the daughter serves as a literary trope to stir a sense of national pride and outrage against the foreign overlords. So, we see this trope used in another source, more or less contemporary with that of the hybrid Scholion. Did we read this? Right? Here, he names the bride Hannah. The account begins with a medrash on the verse from Psalms. Their swords shall pierce their hearts, and their bows shall be broken. Their bows shall be broken. Rabbi Yochanan said, "These are the Greeks who made war with the Hasmonean house." The She'ilta then explains the war in greater detail, beginning the story with a violent and graphic description of the attempted rape. Okay, so we already read this. We already read this, right? Okay, so that's the story of Hannah in 3 different accounts. And, right? So we saw, okay, but then the daughter of Hannah and her 7 sons is another story who is very, it's very sad. The story of Hannah and her 7 sons that were martyred, right? They were literally gave their life for just not to bow down to idols, right? Right? So that was a very sad story also. There's another story who is very yeah. So that's the start of Hanukkah, right? And tomorrow maybe I'll find a different video of Hanukkah, right? Maybe one that is also interesting. And right, we'll talk about Judith, right, who killed the general, right? And we'll talk about also Hannah and her 7 sons, and we will continue talking about all different kinds of things about Hanukkah. And so we have 7 more nights to celebrate. And yeah, so that's, the Hanukkah lights went out, right? My menorah is, the lights went out, so I think it's time to say shalom. Shalom, 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 shalom. Now it's time to say shalom. I am going home. Anyway, I'm tired. So, feel free to subscribe or to unsubscribe. Feel free to like or not to like. Feel free to comment, even though if I don't like some of your comments because they're Jew hating and whatever, I might just block you. But happy holidays for the Christians who don't hate us. Happy holiday to you. Happy Christmas. And for the Jews, happy Hanukkah. And happy holidays to all. Have a great day. Bye.